Hi guys, welcome to The Bite. My name is Jackie. On today's episode, we're going to be making orange chocolate ghraybeh. Ghraybeh is an Arabic butter cookie. I showed the traditional version last year during this time of year. This is like a very holiday cookie. But I thought of this idea last year towards the end of the year and I thought, okay, I'll try it and share it next year during Christmas time. So what we're going to be making is that same cookie. There's one major difference, maybe a couple, just adding orange to it, and then we're gonna be dipping them in chocolate, or you can drizzle them, whichever one you want, but they are delicious and so addictive, just like the traditional version. So the main three ingredients are right here, so let's go over them right now. So of course I have the powdered sugar, I have some all-purpose flour right here, and I have my samneh. There is a major difference in this, and I'll go over that in just a second, but then I have an orange that we're gonna be zesting, and that's gonna add the orange flavor. However, an optional ingredient is orange extract. I happen to have this on hand from just recipe testing and recipe developing, but if you don't have this, don't go out and buy it if you're only gonna use it for this. Just grate an extra orange or a little extra of your orange, and you'll be good. This, if you do happen to have this on hand, don't use it like vanilla extract. I would not recommend just kind of pouring it and eyeballing it. You really want to measure anything that's not vanilla extract. You definitely want to measure it out. So that's what I really recommend for doing that if you use the orange extract. For the samneh, the last ghraybeh recipe, which was the traditional one that I used, I made my samneh, which I have a video on, and I highly recommend that you watch that before you make this or the other version. The samneh that I used in last year's video is my traditional one, and it does have a spice in it that adds a lot. Like, it adds such a delicious element that really sets it apart from any other ghraybeh that you've tasted, and I think for that cookie, it's necessary. For this one, I feel like that spice takes away from the orange flavor, so I eliminate that spice, or when I'm making my samneh, I don't add it. So all I did to make this was I added some sticks of butter to my saucepan, I let it come to a boil, and it develops a white foam on top, so I just scrape that right off. And as you scrape it off, you'll see that the clear yellow color is underneath, and that is the clarified butter. So when you do that, you're just taking off the milk solids and you're left with pure butter fat. Sounds so healthy, but that's what you need for this, and that's what gives these cookies that melt in your mouth the minute you bite into them texture. If you use regular butter, they come out a little bit more crispy and they're still delicious and still good, but the clarified butter sets it apart. And that's really what makes it into ghraybeh. So let's get started. It takes absolutely no time to make. So all I'm gonna do here is add my samneh into the butter, or into the sugar. You do wanna add this room temperature. I actually just made this, the samneh, right before we filmed this video. So I had to stick it into the fridge for a little bit, but it works just as fine. So I'm just gonna mix this up, and I want it to get really nice and fluffy. Alrighty, so you see how whipped and fluffy this looks? That is exactly what I want. So now, this is where you add in your orange zest. And the zest, believe it or not, really does add a lot of good flavor. And it gives the cookies a nice, beautiful fragrance too. So they're not gonna look like an orange color, and that's okay. You want them to be natural tasting, and you want them to be natural looking too. So I am pretty much adding this entire orange because I really want to taste the flavor. Okay, now I'm gonna add a tiny bit of this orange extract, not even a half a teaspoon, like a quarter teaspoon, just directly in there. Too much liquid in here will change the texture of the cookie entirely, and I want it to be as melt in your mouth texture as possible. And just from the zest alone, that orange fragrance hits you, and that is what I want. But you do lose a little bit of that once it bakes, so that's why I think the orange extract works well here. So now this is good, and I'm just going to add in the flour. It's really important that when you're measuring the flour, you don't pack it in. Just like I mentioned in my previous ghraybeh video, if you were to pack it, you're adding too much extra flour. Believe it or not, it is extra flour when you do that. So take your measuring cup, tablespoon by tablespoon, add flour into the measuring cup, and then level it off with a butter knife. That way you're getting the most even measurement possible. Alrighty, I switched to my spatula to bring this dough together, and it's looking crumbly, and that's okay. This is what we want. It looks like it's pretty well combined. Then you can see when I push it down that it kind of gets more compact. So this is to the point that we can actually wrap it and chill it in the fridge. All right, I got some plastic wrap laid out right here, and I'm just gonna turn out all this dough onto the plastic wrap. And then with my hands, I'm gonna form it into a log because we are gonna be making these into like slice and bake cookies. In the original video, I shared with you some traditional shapes that we do for the regular ghraybeh, but for this, because it's a non-traditional version of the cookie, I wanted to do a non-traditional shape as well. And I thought that this would be the perfect way to do it. And it almost looks like little orange slices when you do it that way. The good thing about this dough is that you can taste it as you go because there is no eggs. So it is safe to eat the cookie dough.
So hold that on me.
Really?
Let me taste it.
Really? Get your fat fingers out of my video.
Oh, right here, right in the middle.
When you're tasting it, you can see if you want to add more orange zest or if you want to add, you know, salt or any other ingredients. So what I'm doing here is pushing it together as best as I can. If it does crumble, I'm just gonna squeeze it right back together. And we're gonna stick this dough in a log into the fridge for about 30 minutes at least. Even if you do it overnight, that works just as well, if not better. But because I am filming this video tonight, I wanna make sure that I can finish it. So I'm gonna put this beauty into the fridge for 30 minutes, let it chill so that it's a lot easier to slice and bake, and then we'll cover them with chocolate and they are gonna be so delicious and so melty and wonderful. Right, the dough has chilled. I'd prefer to leave it in there for about an hour, but I think at 30 minutes is the bare minimum and it'll still work just as fine. So now that it's in a log shape, I'm just gonna cut it to my desired thickness, and I'm using a butter knife because they are soft enough to use a butter knife. And you can see I'm gonna try and cut them as even as possible so that they have even baking time. So now I'm just gonna place them all on the baking sheet, and the good thing about these is they really don't spread too much, so you don't need to do them super far apart. So I'm gonna kind of, just so that I can do them all on one sheet, I'm just gonna kind of put them pretty close together. If some of them fall apart and there's little crumbles, just push them right back softly into the dough and it'll be just fine. These are ready to go. My oven is preheated to 300 and these are gonna bake for 20 to 22 minutes. No longer than that. They don't need to become golden brown. They're gonna stay like a nice snowy white color. And you still wanna be able to see the little flecks of the orange zest, which I think looks so pretty. So I'm gonna do this. And then once it's almost done baking, I'm gonna prepare the chocolate that we're gonna drizzle on top. I think I'm gonna drizzle today. And I'll explain why once it's out of the oven. So the cookies are out of the oven, then they've cooled for about 5 minutes. Don't touch them, just like I said in the other video, resist the urge because if you touch them, it'll leave like fingerprints almost and the cookie will stick to your finger and it'll burn. So just be very careful and just don't touch them right away. And I have my chocolate ready to drizzle, and I'm choosing to drizzle because if I dip them, I have to wait for the cookies to cool pretty much overnight. And I want to get this going tonight. All I did was melt some chocolate chips, I don't know, like a 1/4 cup, and then I added about a tablespoon of shortening. You can also use vegetable oil, and that just allows the chocolate to become more drizzleable. So that's what I want. If you have, and this is where the inspiration for these came from, those chocolate orange balls where you slam it against a hard surface and the chocolate falls into like orange slices, those were my favorite as a kid. And that's what made me love the combination of chocolate and orange together. So you could always melt that and mix that with either shortening or oil as well. So with this, I'm gonna do a couple practice drizzles in the bowl to see how thick or thin I want it. And I'm just going to drizzle them right on the ghraybeh. does not have to be perfect or uniform. They're gonna look beautiful and they're gonna taste amazing either way. These just look so good. So good, oh my gosh. So good, I can't wait. I'm going in. I'm eating right off the pan today. What is better than a cookie that melts in your mouth with chocolate? Absolutely nothing. You can taste the orange, you can taste the clarified butter. As odd as that sounds, clarified butter really adds a different element than regular butter does. The hint of chocolate is just the perfect amount, and I'd probably recommend drizzling it over dipping it, because that way the chocolate may overpower if you dip them, because you still want to taste the cookie itself. So I'm definitely getting the orange. I'm getting that hint of chocolate, and I'm going in for another bite. Make these for your holiday table, just 4 ingredients, and you are left with something so spectacular and just so bakery worthy. People are gonna ask you, did you seriously make these? And you're gonna say, I did, I sure did. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. Make sure to give these a try, and don't forget to show me on Instagram when you do, because I love seeing your recreations. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook and Instagram, and subscribe to the channel while you're here. And we will see you next time on The Bite.